At first, Renate was under the impression that they were merely joking around, and she was completely naive to the fact that she was in a precarious circumstance. There was a threat in the form of a shark that was streamlined and sleek, and it had a dorsal fin that was tipped with white. It was moving around and around her white cap on top of the ocean shark as it quietly pursued her with its large round eyes, fixated on her after it had determined that she was the prey it was seeking for, after it had determined that she was the target of its hunt, after it had identified her as the prey it was looking for. Not only do white tips have teeth that are as sharp as razors and massive bodies, but they also have a unique combination of skills that make them a living nightmare for any prey that dares to cross their path. White tips have the ability to sense their victims' emotions and adjust their behavior accordingly. As a result, they are considered to be one of the most dangerous types of sharks. To begin, white tips have earned a bad reputation due to the brutality of their hunting techniques. They are famous for stalking their prey from below and using their acute senses to notice even the slightest movement in the water. This allows them to supply their prey quickly and efficiently. As soon as they detect something that could be a meal, they will dash towards it at a breakneck speed, utilizing their muscular tail as a propeller to move them forward. Their jaws are capable of exerting up to 1,000 pounds of force. Their bite is nothing short of ferocious, but what makes white tips even more dangerous is their persistence. Unlike other sharks who may give up if their target puts up a fight, white tips will not give up until they have their prey. White tip sharks are notorious for their ability to tear the prey. White tips are relentless. They will continue to follow their prey even if the victim is able to avoid their initial attack, even if the victim is successful in escaping their initial attack. White tips represent a serious threat to swimmers and divers who are in the wrong place at the wrong time because of this. Another aspect that contributes to white tip sharks' widespread distribution is their adaptability, which allows them to live in a variety of environments. White tips are able to flourish in a wide variety of habitats, ranging from the shallowest reefs to the open ocean's deepest depths. White tips are found all around the world. This means that people are more likely to come into contact with them than they would be with other kinds of sharks, which are more likely to remain in specific places. The shark suddenly released a burst of energy and accelerated up as it got closer to her. At the same time, it opened its mouth, exposing a formidable set of teeth that are well fitted for ripping flesh and smashing bones, and then it closed its mouth on her leg. Renate felt an immediate and searing pain throughout her entire body as the shark's teeth dug further and deeper into her flesh. The pain increased in intensity as the shark's teeth went deeper. She let out a piercing scream that brought the beachgoers to a standstill, and everyone's attention was immediately drawn to the water adjacent to the jetty that she had used to go into the deeper ocean. She had gotten into trouble. She was frantically waving her arms about in the air while asking for rescue at the same time. In spite of the fact that the shark's teeth were still around her legs, it began violently shaking her in the water before finally losing its hold on her. She was thrashing about and trying to defend herself when all of a sudden, just when she thought the shark had finished striking, it came at her again and again and again. Renate was howling in agony and flailing her arms and legs as she battled to keep her buoyancy. She was also squirming around in the water. It was obvious to everyone who was watching in horror that she was battling for her life, and people were looking from all directions with their mouths agape as they were clearly terrified. Due to the numerous attacks that were being made on her, however, they did not have the courage to attempt to help her because it seemed as though there was more than one shark in the water. Consequently, they did not attempt to aid her. People immediately began to crowd the coastline, and those who had been enjoying the peace and quiet of the lake had to make a mad dash to get out of there before the chaos broke out. The seascape had devolved into a state of full and utter anarchy, and then there was an abrupt silence as the water that was churning around Renate turned crimson. The silence was followed by Renate being surrounded by blood-colored water. Almost immediately after that, Renate ceased all of her movement and became completely immobile. She was brought to the shore by the lifeguards, despite the fact that portion of the flesh on her buttocks was missing when they discovered her. She had been resting there, oblivious to her surroundings, as the tide pushed her gradually closer to the shore. She had deep bite marks on her belly. Her right arm was severed below the elbow, and her right leg was also gone below the knee. All of these injuries were on her right side. Unfortunately, the lifeguard was unable to bring her back to life despite his best efforts. Within a matter of seconds, a crowd quickly gathered around the lifeguards, and the news of the shark attack quickly made its way to every part of the resort. When Rudolph listened to her account, he experienced a sensation similar to that of the world whirling around him. He accidentally spilled the beverage he had been sipping on, and all of a sudden, it had a bitter aftertaste in his tongue. He dashed into the growing mob and pushed his way to the area where Renate's lifeless body was laying. It took only a few short minutes, but his lifelong companion was suddenly ripped away from him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Word of the prior shark attacks that had taken place in the same region before Renate was spreading across the beach, prompting tourists who had not yet arrived at the beach to get angry. These previous attacks had taken place in the same region before Renate. Because he couldn't believe what he was seeing, he covered his face with his hands and buried his head in his palms. They had not been warned about the risk of shark attacks by the personnel, and yet they persisted in swimming in the sea as if they were naive to the looming threat. However, in order to defend themselves, the personnel at the hotel stated that they did not believe it was necessary to warn their customers because the authorities had assessed that the sharks did not pose a danger anymore. Their responses fell on deaf ears among the unhappy guests, who felt that the hotel administration had placed making money over ensuring that they were safe. These tourists were angry because they believed that the hotel administration had put profit over their safety. Rudolph's vacation had come to a sudden end, and he now needed to make plans to carry his wife's remains back to the United States with him so that she could be laid to rest in a respectful manner. Although no one was ever brought to justice for the crime, investigators speculated that the offender was an oceanic white-tipped shark measuring 3 meters in length. It was obvious that an unusually sharp item had been inserted into her body because of the severity of the attack and the substantial amount of tissue that was torn from her body in numerous regions. Additionally, the torn tissue was distributed across her body. In the end, after investigations into the sudden increase in the number of shark attacks along the resort, it was considered that the warmer than usual temperature of the water may have enticed the shark to the northern portions of the sea. This suspicion was formed after the investigations into the sudden spike in the number of shark attacks along the resort were completed. In addition, a ship that was transporting animals from Australia had been seen by a number of tourists discarding the corpses of dead animals into the water as it cruised past the shore. and many people believe that the personnel on board the ship had unwittingly drawn one of the most dangerous types of shark.